Welcome to episode 19 of the Helpful Huddle podcast. Thank you so much for listening in today. In our episode today, I get the opportunity to interview Jen Piturro. She is doing amazing work, and I am super excited for this interview. You are in for a treat as we dive into her story and how she is changing the world. So turn up your volumes, sit back, and relax, and enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the Helpful Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Luke, and this, for people that have no idea, is our second run at this because I had computer issues. But welcome to Jen. Say hi to the people, Jen.
Hello, everyone.
And I like to start these interviews off by telling a quick story of how we met. It's now 10 minutes ago or so. Um, we met virtually, some emails back and forth, and we got this all settled up. And she has bared with me through technical difficulties for the last few minutes, so she's awesome. But I'm really looking forward to this interview, and that kind of just wraps up our intro to how we met each other.
It does.
But I am ready to hopefully, fingers crossed, get started and go all the way through. How do you feel?
I feel great. Let's do it again.
Let's do it all again. So, I like to start off these interviews broad, and I want to learn so much more about you as a person. So, I want to know your story. I want to know how childhood to now, how you got to this point. Anything that you're willing to share and take as long as you want with that.
Okay. Well, I was born to a very traditional Italian father and mother. My father came off the boat, literally, from Italy. He was 15, and his parents wanted him to have an American opportunity. And my grandfather took him here because when my grandmother showed up with them at the dock in Italy, she sneezed one too many times, and they said, "You can't go." And
Oh
so
my.
the boys came, and I bet they didn't miss her much. And she followed a year later. So my father didn't even speak English, but he knew America. He knew it was an
Uh-huh.
opportunity. And, so he was excited. He went to school in the US. They came to New York, where my grandfather had sisters. So he was raised very traditionally, with everybody raising him. And he met my mom, also Italian, but she was born here. And they wanted to have a similar, traditional Italian family. So I was the firstborn. I'm one of first of four, and they expected me to follow suit, to get an education, because this was America. My father got an engineering degree, but I think that they expected me to have kids, get married and have kids in my 20s, probably early 20s. And that was not the path I saw for myself. I wanted to
Gotcha.
sort of break out of that tradition and be in the corporate world and climb the corporate ladder. And I loved the TV business. I loved watching TV, and I wanted to be in the TV business. And so I was fortunate enough to get a job that led to another job. And for 12 years, I was a single woman living that life that to me was everything in New York. And
Uh,
just wanted that, corner office on the top floor. And I was vice president marketing for a couple of television syndication companies. And it was a crazy workaholic life. It was busy, a lot of travel, wonderful things. But, I got a great job that I loved. However, one quiet afternoon in my pretty apartment, I heard a voice in me from
mhm.
here. It definitely wasn't a head voice, because it was a strange voice. And it asked me a question. And the question was, if this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? And Luke, that really stopped me, because I'd never thought that I was on the wrong path. I thought I was on the right path.
Mhm.
But in that moment, I realized that there was something missing in my life. And if I didn't figure it out, I'd be trying to figure it out my whole life. And there was this hole in me. And I very soon realized that it was a little bit of that traditional family that I didn't really think was for me, and especially having kids around. So I had to figure out for myself a way to bring children into my life where I could still continue my career. Because at
Hmm.
that point, I didn't understand purpose. When I was growing up, nobody talked about purpose. Nobody said, find your purpose before you find a job. They said, find a job.
Yep.
And I started reading in emergency shelters, the places where police and social worker brought children who were traumatized and, you know, violently hurt in places and homes where they were supposed to be taken care of. We all read those stories, see them on the news. And I had seen one recently, and I called the police and I said, where do you bring these children? Maybe I could go there and read or do something. And so they gave me some numbers of local shelters. Every city has them, sadly. And I called and I said, can I come and read to the children at night? Is that a possibility? And they welcomed me. They said, sure, that would be lovely. And I went in the first night in my business suit after work with some children's books.
Hmm.
And I sat on the floor of a very bare room. There were no chairs for big people, just little kids. And I didn't know much about the kind of place it was, but it was an emergency shelter where they took children either alone or with somebody who was running with them for safety.
Hmm.
And that's where they were going to be processed, which is a horrible word to use, but that's where they would start paperwork on children who hopefully couldn't go back to those places that were not caring for them, but to find a new life for these kids.
Yeah.
So I would read there, and they were pretty quiet because they were traumatized. They were afraid. Some of them were
Hmm.
little, and I just kept them together and read and read and read 45 minutes to an hour. And one night after that, they didn't say much because, like I said, they were uncomfortable. They didn't know what was happening. They were going to take them to sleep, which they always did when I finished. And I followed to see what their room would look like to go to sleep in their bedroom. And I don't know why I was shocked, because I was just so oblivious to the situation and the places, what they were like. And it was
Hmm.
the people there were so nice, but it was bare. They were huddled together on futons and couches and cots and things, and small
Hmm.
beds, and trying to sleep, and crying, and they were sleeping in their clothes, the same things that they had been worn. You could see way too long, and some of them didn't fit, some of them were dirty, and they were frightened, and then lights out. And I stood there, frozen, watching this. And memories of my mom and the bedtime she gave us four kids was loving and happy and fun. And you know I never thought about it until that night. I was staring at these kids in this unacceptable nighttime, lack of routine, lack of love, lack of anything. And I
Hmm.
asked, as they were taking me back to leave, back to the door, can I bring some pajamas next time? And they thought that was a lovely idea. And all week I couldn't get that idea, those kids, out of my mind. And I went crazy and bought a lot of pajamas, and a lot of
Yeah.
books. And I was all excited. Went back in my business suit again and read to them, and then started giving out the pajamas. And one little girl was so afraid of me, so afraid to come near me, and she didn't want to take anything from me. She just kept shaking her head no. And I kept trying gently because I didn't understand. The other kids took them and went to that room. And finally, I tried one more time with her, and I knelt down with the pink pajamas, and I told her they were pink. She'd love them because there was a little pink in her purple top, which was soiled, and her hair was a mess. Her pigtails were lopsided. Her shoes were like size 10. She must have been about 6 or so. And I just said, honey, don't you want your pajamas? They're so soft. You can keep them. You can wear them to bed and you'll feel so comfy. And she leaned in and she asked me, what are pajamas? And she could hardly say the word pajama. She struggled before she could say it. And she kept saying, what are they? And that, Luke, was the beginning of the end of the whole corporate dream, and the beginning of a whole new life that I had to learn how to live.
Wow. That that's a truly incredible story. And I mean, it's honestly really eye-opening because this happens in every city, just like you mentioned. And there's unfortunately so many kids out there that don't have that loving home and are somewhere that they're not. I mean, obviously the workers are doing the best they can, but it's just not the same.
Right.
So, but I want to keep going on that same conversation of like you mentioned whole new life. So dive into a little bit more of what you do now.
Well, I couldn't really, I couldn't keep the same enthusiasm for my corporate career.
Right.
And it got very difficult financially, buying so many pajamas and running around and books. And, between the financial mess I got myself into and not caring about my job and bosses realizing who is this person that's taken over Genevieve's body, I knew I'd be
Hmm.
fired or quit if I didn't quit. I was afraid to quit. I was afraid to tell anybody what I was doing because what do you say? I'm going to quit this job that's keeping my mortgage paid and giving me this life that I worked so hard for because I want to give pajamas to children for the rest of my life because you don't understand, they don't have them. They don't even know what they are. That sounded crazy. It sounds still crazy when I say it to you, Luke. So I
Right.
didn't tell anyone what I was doing. And I was leading literally a double life, running here, running there, not saying why, making a mess of my job and my finances. And I I tried to tell one friend and she just said, she thought I was crazy. She said, why would you do that? Why can't you do that like on Saturday? Why do you have to give everything up? And she just didn't get it. But I was obsessed.
Hmm.
So it started to, just take over my life. And while most people thought I was crazy, I met a nice guy at the time and he's very spiritual. And when I got up the courage to tell him, he said, I think you should go for it. And
Aw.
that was really helpful. So between then and for 20 years building Pajama Program with just, I say, moxie. I knew nothing about it. I didn't even know it would be a nonprofit. I didn't even know how to make money at it. I thought I'd work at McDonald's at night. But we've grown incredibly with more than 40 chapters around the US, more than 7 million pajamas and books given to children, money raised and events and, tens of thousands of volunteers and sponsors. And it's just been a real lesson in finding purpose and how it changes everything.
That's amazing. And I think it's something that I want to talk about more with you is like that word purpose and like what it I want to know like one what it means to you and if that's different from what I think a lot of people think purpose means. So I guess I want you to answer back to what I say like when I think purpose traditionally I feel like it's an overused word to kind of and it's more of finding your purpose. I feel like is more do almost doing what people think you should do, not so much what you want to do. And I don't know if that makes sense because I actually didn't think about it before this. But what I think that you're finding is like your true heart of heart purpose for like l what living, like what you do. You're so wholeheartedly passionate about it. And I'd love for you to expound on that because I feel like I'm giving you a lot of word vomit because I actually don't have the words that I'm looking for right now.
Well, I think purpose is what you said. The word is heart, what your heart is telling you to do. But my generation, we weren't trained to even know that word or to consider that word. So now it is becoming more popular, which is a great thing because all of us are here for a reason. And whether we think we can't make money playing the piano or, we love animals, but, we make a lot more money being an attorney. People expect me to get a job, but it never ends well. It just doesn't. If you're not following your heart, especially if you're following somebody else's suggestions, at some point you feel a hole in your heart. And it's happening to a lot of people now because COVID and everything scared the life out of all of us. And everyone is now saying, hey, there's no meaning in my life. I'm just waking up and going to work. I don't even like this job, or I don't even feel like I'm contributing. or I like the company, but nobody's listening to me, or how can I be more part of the team? So everyone is reflecting on their heart now. Our heart was open during this awful COVID time to wake up. It's waking us up. So your purpose is also your legacy. It's like, what do you
Hmm.
want to do? What do you want to contribute in this world? It's not necessarily at the end of your life as you're living it. You're building a legacy, and if you're working with other people, you're building a legacy together. So for Pajama Program, we're still building the legacy. It's everybody's contribution that contributes and leaves something beautiful here. So purpose is following your heart. It's taking the time to think about it and being brave enough to do it. And if you haven't done it till now, brave enough to bring it up from the back burner.
I think that is such an amazing part of the story, and something that I want to ask you of, like, I guess how did your I guess your because it sounds like your purpose, like your drive to do what you want to do and what you are doing, it had to get to a point where it out that whatever was in you outweighed the comfort zone that you were in. What was that transition like is what I'm trying to ask.
It was difficult at the beginning until I saw and trusted other people who did understand and did want to help. I had a story about a little girl, and I learned that if I told people about what she asked me, and I shared her story, that people then understood. Now, not everybody, of course. I'm sure there are lots of people who I don't know who like turned away from me, shaking their head like, she's crazy. When she giving up? But you don't need everybody. You just need the right people. And so they rally. The right people will rally around you when you share your purpose and you talk about it. The human connection is amazing. It's an amazing, amazing phenomenon, that how people will come to your aid, will support you, will help you. The world opens up. Mysterious miracles happen when you're on purpose. It's just we need to take a chance.
I think that's something that so many people are so hesitant to do. And whether it's for one reason or another, I know for me, that like the quote unquote fear of failure is always on my mind with it. Like, what if plan A fails? What's plan B, plan C? But sometimes there's not a plan B and there's no explanation behind it, but you just go for it. I think it's really scary for people.
Yeah, it's burning the boats, if you know that expression.
I do know that expression, burn the boats.
Burn the boats. That's it. I mean, I always said to my new husband after, when we got married, I could work at McDonald's. I could do the midnight shift. I could do that if I can't pay my share of the bills for, any longer, or whatever. I never had to apply, but I got close. I
Wow.
mean, it's scary. It's scary, but that's when magic happens.
And I actually wanted to ask you with that because I didn't know, obviously, that you just said it got close. Um, what I guess like what inside of you kept you going on that path when it got hard?
Well, the kids, obviously, the children. And I learned some of the stories, and I
Mm.
remember that one of the caretakers said in passing, she would never know that it kept me going, but she said, these children have had so many people disappoint them. And I went home and I said, I'm not going to be another person who disappoints them. I am not. And I'd see their faces when I would go, whether I'd seen them before or never. They would get excited about the pajamas. They loved them. They'd put them on right away over the clothes, or they'd be taking their clothes off and be standing there naked, putting on the pajamas because they were soft and comfortable and they fit and they were clean. It was a present. It was brand new. And I was obsessed with them. It was just their innocence, and certainly didn't deserve where they were and why they were, in that position. I just felt that maybe that mothering that I didn't give my own children was strong. I just couldn't disappoint them.
I understand. I understand as most as I can. when it comes to something like that. Um, wow, there's so many places I want to take this conversation, but I'm trying to stay a little bit focused.
Mhm.
Um, I guess on the backside of it, you went down this path of like starting your own nonprofit, and I know that you obviously had an education going through it, but it was it. Assume it was different than what you ended up getting into. So I guess my question behind it is like, how did you learn what you needed to do to take this initiative and take this into what you've made it?
You know, I wasn't prepared. I didn't know anything about nonprofit. I didn't even know that's what I was starting. I didn't even know what a 501c3 was. I had to learn all of that. But the skills I did have, um, creativity, marketing, the things I used in marketing television were great skills for marketing any message.
Mhm.
And I have moxie. I I jump. There are times when I jumped from one position to another opportunity, hoping that it would be what I wanted it to be without knowing for sure. So I have that gene. It's
Gotcha.
not always doesn't serve me well often, but usually I can sort of figure out how to swim. So I had to learn step by step, and I had to learn how to ask for help. When 12 years into a
Mm,
career, when you're doing real well, you don't feel very comfortable asking about something you know nothing about, because then there all the questions come, and then they want to know what you're doing and why, and you just lose your confidence, which happened to me. So I
mm.
had to force myself to ask for help. And when I did, again, the human connection doesn't disappoint.
Uh, It does it. And I guess that leads me to one of my next questions. Like, did you have mentors along the way?
I had them in my business,
Of
and
course.
I sought them out in this new venture because I didn't know anything about it, and I was really afraid because it's a whole government thing, it's a whole tax thing, it's a whole application thing, and I was not prepared, but I wanted to do it because I felt it was a responsibility once people wanted to help.
Hmm.
So I had to do a lot of a lot of business things, a lot of legal things, a lot of accounting things that were not marketing. And that training was on the job. That was asking other nonprofit leaders for help. Um, Thankfully, there are a lot of people going to nonprofit because they want to help, and so they will help a poor girl who's losing her shirt but wants to help these kids. So they gave me their time and their guidance, and that helped. But again, I had to pick up the phone and ask for help, and it was not easy. But now, I mean, I will help anybody because it's I understand the
Hmm.
fear and the doubt when you're starting something new, especially if it's halfway through your corporate life, you're making this change.
Wow. No, and I can totally resonate with not being good at always asking for help. And I
Mm.
think a lot of people do also struggle with that of they want to figure it out on their own, and it's a lot easier when you ask, especially people that have
It's
done
so
it.
long. It takes so long when you don't ask. And for me, there was always the money concern. And so if I didn't ask and it took me a month, that was a month of bills that I couldn't pay because I was afraid to ask for support or ask. So, yeah, we all struggle with that. I don't know why, because once you start asking, people want to help.
Mhm. No, they do. And I think that's also the weirdest, not the weirdest, the hardest part to at least understand why we have trouble asking for help. Because because I also feel like pretty much anyone is willing to help. Not obviously not 100%, but people are always willing to help. And I don't think I've ever asked anyone something and they said no. Like,
Right?
and I lived in New York City, and it's like when you move there, I don't know where anything is. I don't know if I'm on the uptown or downtown train, but people you ask and people respond. And it's kind of crazy, I think.
Yeah. I
Um,
think we just think that other people instinctively, magically know everything, and we're the dumb one, and we're going to be perceived as the dumb one. I don't know why we're so insecure. I don't know why we don't want to let anyone know that we need help, because, and I don't know why we think everybody else was born knowing it all, and they're going to look at us like, we didn't get in the right line to get a brain.
no, yeah, that's you're absolutely right. Um, but something else I wanted to ask you because this what you're doing has turned into, like you talked about, a movement, and you can see it over. I think it's your right shoulder. You wrote a book
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that,
yes.
if people don't know, very popular. Like I believe it's got like Oprah's stamp of approval and everything like that. But talk to us. Do you mind explaining what the book is about?
Yes. Well, after I was executive director for 20 years, and of course, I'll always be the founder, I wanted to write my book and speak and teach purpose and legacy. So I'll pass the baton of executive director to Jamie Dice, who was one of the presidents of our boards. And so she's running it now. And my career is writing and speaking and teaching about
Mhm.
finding your purpose, the power of the human connection, and the power of creating a legacy. And so I wrote this because so many people over the years asked me for help or advice on starting something new, not necessarily a nonprofit a lot of times, but purpose has nothing to do with finding a nonprofit. It's your
Right.
purpose. You could sing, you could make millions of dollars if you're on purpose, bravo. But they wanted to know about change and jumping and some about nonprofit. So I would always be very honest, like I have been with you, and more specifically when I was on, had one-on-ones about the the challenges. And I
Mhm.
hoped that, and I still hope that my story is embraced, because I think it's comforting for people to know when they're having a hard time that it's not them, that they're not dumb, that this is how it is with something new. And I put my
Mhm.
heart out there, and I told about all the things I did wrong, and I try to say, don't do it this way. Do it this way, because I did it that way. I'm telling you, let's do it
Mhm.
this way. But I get you. I get why you put all your best friends on the board of directors, but don't do that. They're not going to do the work. They're going to say, "Oh, good, you do it, Jen. This is great. Let's go for a drink." No, but we all do that. Nonprofit founders, we do that. We think our hearts in this. Our friends, we love our friends. They love us. They're going to want to do this.
Mhm.
So there are lots of things I wanted to talk about the whole journey. And it turned out, obviously, it's great, knock wood. We'll go on and, forever. But I wanted people to feel that they had support, and that I would understand and be cheering them on.
And I appreciate that about you and about your story, because I do feel like a lot of time, like when you look on social media and things of that nature, everything has like a perfect outlook, and it completely ignores all the mess that someone has had to go through, or their life is going through, or whatever it might be. But it's the difference in, like, we can look at now, and you have created a very successful movement, nonprofit, charity, whatever words you want to use. But there was a lot of trial and error before that. There was the you stepping away from a very successful career in something else to follow something that you had no idea what to do. Um, I think that part is incredible, and I think you sharing the struggle of it, your personal, not a struggle or the grind or whatever you want to call it. I think that I just think it's super important, and things that aren't talked about enough.
Yeah, I think you're talking about social media. Sure, absolutely. I think we're also worried about what other people are going to think of us.
Hmm.
We're so worried to let our guard down. We're so worried to cry. I cry all the time. I cry on stage when I speak. I cry. And I used to be so embarrassed and hold it in. And then my husband said, "Why?" why are you holding it in? Just let it out. Connect with people. And
Mhm.
that's why I talk about the human connection, because we stay aloof, we stay back, because I think we're afraid of how we're going to look to someone, and we're going to look inferior. I don't know why most of us, I don't like to meet the person who feels perfect, but so many of us feel like we look inferior to other people, when really we just want to connect on a real raw level.
Mm. No, completely agree. And you're touching on something else that I wanted to ask you about, and that is the human connection. And more of like, I guess I want you to expound on the importance of it, and also the importance of something that you just talked about, of like being authentic and real with them.
Right. Well, I can tell you an example. Um,
Yeah.
when we had the recession in
Mhm.
2008, 7 or 8, you're too young.
I
Every
know, I was around.
okay. In New York City, especially, everything
True.
was going down, right? Everything was going down. Everybody was losing. Everybody was fearful. New York's never going to come back, they said, all of that. And of course, nonprofits being were devastated, because it was hitting us, hitting
Mhm.
everyone. We couldn't have benefits because nobody had money, and nobody wanted to ask for money because it was all going down. Okay, so I was beside myself, thinking again, I can't let this go down. I know they're falling away, especially if they had these New York investors, with a lot of money. We never had one. I always wanted one of those New York angels, but everybody who had New York Angel was losing their
Mhm.
angel. So we just had people, ground, the ground movement of regular people with lots of little monies coming. But I was really, really afraid, and I couldn't figure out how to stay afloat in the
Mhm.
recession. And I couldn't sleep. It was a mess. So at one of our board meetings, I got up the courage, because I always had the ideas, I always had the enthusiasm, I always had the moxie. And I had to say, which killed me, I don't know what to do. I'm afraid, and I need help. I don't know what to do. And one of the board members said to me, I think we should go bowling. Let's do a bowling fundraiser. Now, Luke, I didn't know anybody bowled in New York.
Didn't know that there was a bowling alley in New
I
York.
didn't know there was a bowling alley. I don't bowl. My parents bowled with the old folks, but I'm thinking, is she crazy? I'm talking we need money. I'm not talking we need, $10 cover charge here for a few people bowling. But I had nothing else. So she said, come on, we'll go bowling. We'll raise some money. Let's just see how it goes. Let's do bowling. I remember thinking, this is crazy. This is a
Mhm.
waste of time, whatever. But I did it. Everybody rallied, and we've been bowling in the middle of the recession. Well, we raised some money, but we raised morale. We raised spirits for everybody who came to have a good time, because nobody was having a good time. We provided a good time. Everybody was home upset. So people who ventured out heard our story, had fun bowling, had a drink. We raised some money. But from that point on, it's like those people told people, told people, told people, and we got through. And to this day, I am friends with her, and I tease her and I say, bowling really is what I wanted to say. But something in her said people will rally. Let's take a chance. And that is my one of my best human connection stories. It was just people needed to feel, and they need to feel good.
I love that. And I love the response that your partner gave. Like, it was something so pure, unexpected, but also so needed. Like, and it's deeper now, and you kind of look back and see, and I'm looking at it from way outside in, but she had an insight of what kind of people needed, it seemed like. And you don't, when you're
Yeah.
in the thick of things, you don't always have that.
Yeah. And you know what? Sometimes, like, I don't know if she would have articulated it that way. Like, people need to do something good. Sometimes I find when you're on purpose and things are happening, you get some kind of a nudge that you can't explain why this thing comes out of your mouth. Why I said, can I bring pajamas next time? There's so many things that I give credit to God and the universe for those nudges and those little voices and inspiration. And I just think it might have just been something that she didn't know the power of when she said, let's go bowling.
I imagine you're right. I do imagine that she didn't know the impact of that to the extent of that would have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and you've mentioned this other word a couple of times, and it's legacy. And I know that, and I'm sure it's something that you talk about a lot, um, especially because I know you do coaching classes, you speak at events. But when you talk about legacy, one, can you like tell us a little bit more about like what you mean? And then two, like how you I guess how you coach or how you nudge people in the right direction to like think about their legacy and what they want it to be like.
Yes. Okay. So when when I say legacy, your purpose is your
Mhm.
legacy. Your purpose, no matter what it is, brings good into the world because it's coming from your heart. You are loving this and it's coming with that love. You're sharing it, people feel it, there's a connection. It's not like you hate numbers and you're an accountant. That energy is very different than you love singing and you found a way to maybe teach singing or sing in some kind of a group or write songs or something. That energy you're putting out into the world and to other people is different. So when you're on purpose, when you're brave enough to do what you love or change from what you're doing to what you love, you change your energy and you are contributing good to your family. They will see the difference, to your community, to your workspace. Like I said, you can be part of a team. And then if you have an inspiring leader who now many are encouraging people to bring their whole selves to work, you feel
Mm.
better and that energy is palpable, right? You feel that energy. So that is good in the world. That's what a legacy is. A legacy is bringing good to the world and leaving that good when you are done, when you are finished. And it takes it takes years, it takes a lot of people to build legacies, but we need to get going. We need to do this together. We need to. The world needs it. We need it. We need to this to bring us together. And people want to be doing something good. I think we all want to be remembered for doing something good. But while we're doing it, the idea of creating something that's going to leave our mark, that we're changing things, that we're seeing it happen, that we're inspiring people, that we're moving people, things are changing for the better because we're brave enough to do something and to bring others with us. So legacy is something I think we need to pay attention to and really strive for.
Mm. I couldn't agree more, and I love everything you're saying, and you're making me want to like run through a wall or something. Like it is truly motivational, and I just don't want it to I don't want to get lost in the sauce of like not every legacy is going to be remembered by millions and millions of people.
No, that's okay. That's
Exactly.
okay.
And that's okay.
It's a, if
And
it's a family, you know how many people remember Uncle John, Grandma, Grandpa? That's enough.
yes.
That's enough. That's a legacy.
Yes.
And that's worth living for, and that's worth being you for, and using the talent that you were born with to leave that impression on a family.
Exactly. And you mentioned grandma, and my grandma left a big legacy. And I don't know how many people know it, but like I still think about her now, and it makes me want to be a better person. And
Oh,
that's meaningful, and that's one more person that is on this earth now that it can hopefully pass that along, and it stems from thinking about my grandma.
yes, yes. A friend of mine, he passed away, and when he called, well, this man called before we were friends. Man called me from another state, and he said, I heard about what you're doing. I'd like to talk to you and see if I can get involved. And he was a businessman, and he ended up getting involved. We became friends. And he told me soon after, when we met in person, that his mother was on her deathbed, and he must have been in his early 30s. And she asked him, what is your legacy? You've got to think about that. And that's why he decided to explore what he could give and what he could do. And it changed everything for him. And again, it doesn't have to be a nonprofit. Leaders, great leaders, leave incredible legacies. People work at businesses and they create things, and the way they do it creates a beautiful legacy.
Absolutely. And that actually made you mentioned talking about leaders made me think because before, obviously, I try to prepare as much as I can for these interviews, but I was looking at your website and I know that you do like coaching and leadership training, and it makes me, and I also imagine that involves coaching people in leadership positions to be better leaders and have that trickle down effect, like you were talking about on the workspace. Do you, without giving too much away, like what are those meetings like when you're talking to people that are C-suite positions, directors, things like that, but you're helping coach them to coach others.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because even the most successful presidents or vice presidents, they have the same concern. Am I doing good? Am I a
Mhm.
good leader? Am I enjoying what I'm doing? Am I enjoying my family as well as my employees and my teams? Am I enjoying being part of the community? Everybody, every single person can go to work, put their nose to the grindstone and work 8 hours and then go home. We didn't think you had to enjoy it, but more and more we want to. And so the leaders are realizing if they want to, so do the new hires want to feel like they're doing something great, that they're part of the team, that they're all for one and one for all, that they understand the purpose of the organization, and that they want to be part of that purpose, or they wouldn't have said yes to the job. Or that's how it's
Mhm.
becoming. They're not saying yes to every job
Right.
now. People are saying, what are you doing for the community? What is my role here going to be? What are the meetings like? Will I have any input? I want input. I want to be seen. So
Mhm.
even at the very top, people are realizing, how do I feel good about this? Because being a boss just doesn't cut it anymore.
Mhm.
Just
No, and
giving.
that
Mm-mm.
it's so true. And even and you made a comment about the 2008 thing about just more of my age, but I grew up being told that like, hey Luke, they don't pay you to enjoy your job, they pay you to do a job.
Mm.
And so it's a big, so even for me, like where I'm at now, it's a big transition. And bosses are having to think in a different way than more than likely they at least came up through whatever corporate ladder that they grew, because they do have to connect, they do have to retain their employees, they
Yep.
do want to have good reviews on Glassdoor so that the next candidate says yes.
Right. Why would they want to be miserable through all that?
Yeah, no, exactly. And for the first time, and people might think it's silly, but I actually took a lower paying job because I liked the camaraderie community
Mm,
I use the word vibe a lot. Like I liked
mhm.
the vibe of the office that I'm in now, and I couldn't honestly be happier with where I'm at.
Yeah.
And it was and it was the lower paying option, but it just it's been close to a year now, and I don't regret it at all.
Yeah. Well, you are in touch with your soul, with your heart, and with where we're all going now, looking for that fulfillment and that meaning. And I remember years ago, I'm going to say it again, I think you're too young, but it came out in the news as big study, and you can tell me if you're not that young. But I remember everyone being shocked because this big study came out that said workers would rather get a compliment or a pat on the back than a raise. It was
Mhm.
that sad that they were working and weren't noticed or weren't given
Mhm.
shown appreciation. That was what people how people were answering in this study, and that said so much. I'll never forget that. I mean, it floored everybody.
Yeah, and I remember, I don't know if it's that particular study or one that was like just came just after it, but it was a survey of like why are people quitting,
Mm-hmm.
and money was like number five or six or
Yeah.
seven. Like it, but one was like relationship, two was I like I said vibe, but office environment. There, yeah, but money was so low on it, and there has been this big switch to enjoying what you actually do and
Eight
following a
hours a day or more,
passion.
right, Luke? 8 hours a day
Yeah,
or more. How long can you be miserable at eight every day, 8 hours a day?
right.
Yeah. Richard Branson just had came out with an article, an interview, and he talked about EQ is more important than IQ. The emotional quotient of a person, their
Interesting.
compassion, their their emotional connection with people, their interest in people, and clearly he's talking about leaders. We're
Mhm.
getting them farther. Their success was greater than those who concentrated on their IQ and tried to do everything from the brain rather than from the heart. And the human connection is about heart. It's nothing to do with brain. It
For
changes
sure.
everything when you are honest and you look at someone and you tell them how they feel and you make them feel good.
That I mean, yes, nail on the head. Yes.
Mhm.
Um, I love everything you're saying, and it actually makes me want to ask on the flip side of it because I just asked you that part about like leaderships and C suites and higher ups, but what what would you say to those that are mid level new hires, whatever it might be, that are looking to move up with the company and develop those traits to be an effective leader?
Mhm. Listen, we're
Okay.
so used to bosses talking. I grew up in meetings where I didn't say anything really, or I answered the boss's question about did you do this and how did it go?
Mhm.
But I would have appreciated it, and I think that's what's changing now. Input in the beginning of looking for a solution, and I think
Mhm.
the more that new hires or rising stars, we can call them, are suggesting and earnestly suggesting have looked at everything that's going on and have some really good suggestions that they will talk about, will bring to the attention of people who can make that happen in the company. I think those people are going to go far. And if it's not acceptable to the boss, that's still the old fashioned boss there, then they'll find a place where they can be a real part of the key team because they deserve that and they want that. And I think it's clearly happening. We're talking about it. And I think the bosses who needed to leave during COVID left. I think
Mhm.
clearly there are people who are not comfortable giving up their power. And so it's okay if they leave. Retire. It's time.
No, agreed. And I think if I'm not mistaken, COVID brought about like one of the largest, if not the largest, like career changing markets
Yeah.
that has at least been
Great
recorded. If and I
resignation.
may be wrong. Yeah. and I'm part of that statistic. I went back to school and started a whole new career when COVID hit. So
Hmm.
things are changing, and I also think things are changing for the better.
I think it was a near death experience. It felt like, it was a real frightening time. You know,
Hmm.
my mom got COVID, she survived, but I know a lot of people who didn't survive. And it was real. It was a real wake up call, a real wake up call. And all of a sudden we looked at our life, it like flashed before us, and it was like, ugh. And
Right.
I think that's a good thing. I think we're, in a rocky place because we have to find our footing. It's
Hmm.
not all wonderful. Clearly, not everybody's happy. Not everybody's found where they're going to land, but
Hmm.
we're getting there.
We're getting there. It's in one step at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah.
It's not all going to happen at once. Um, I, I want to run through a brick wall. You're motivating me now. Um, um, we are unfortunately getting closer to the end of our like 1 hour episode. So I do want to make sure I do hit a couple things that I'm really excited to hear about, and one of those, because you actually answered most of my questions just naturally.
Okay.
But I like to ask, someone turns on this podcast or jumps on YouTube, whatever, however they're listening, 50 minutes in, they didn't hear anything else, but you have a takeaway message that you want everyone to hear. Um, or if you could give one takeaway message that everyone should hear, and it didn't have to be just one. Not everybody gives just one, but what would that message be?
Look at your life. If this is the next 30 years of your life, is this enough? If you know that something's missing, if you know that you've put something on the back burner, I say you can jump or you can slide it into your life. And sliding into your life is very gratifying. So, whatever it is, if you love to sing and you can't imagine how you could make a penny because you don't sing well and you're already an attorney, take a couple of voice lessons. Join some kind of a group once a week, once every 2 weeks. Don't close your heart to what your gift is, because everything will change. You will find another part of you, and so will everyone else if you even slide that love, that purpose into your life.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. And we talked about it earlier, and we understand that it can be scary, and it is scary. It's uncomfortable, but there's beauty in just doing it.
The more of us that are brave enough, the more will inspire other people.
Mm,
And that's, I think that's one of the responsibilities we have for being here, for being on this planet together, for helping each other, for making it a safer place to be and a joyful place to be. If we understand and we share what we love to do.
beautiful. Period. Like I love that, and I mean
Mm.
that's how this podcast got started. I love hearing people's stories, and I love bringing positivity into the world. And just I didn't know how to do a podcast, but I
You
just
figured it
started.
out.
I figured it out. Figuring it out. Um,
That's good.
but just started. But in closing, I do want to give you like an opportunity, like to quote unquote market yourself, but more importantly, like if people want to continue this conversation with you, if they want to learn more about you, if they want to donate to the cause, all the above, like how can they do all of these things?
Well, if they want to find me, my website's GenevievePiturro.com. If they want to donate or find out more about Pajama Program, that's pajamaprogram.org.
Hmm. Easy.
Easy, easy. Yeah. And I'm happy to talk to anybody about their purpose, brainstorm, um, share anything I can do. So just find me on my website, email me, and we'll find some time.
Perfect. Thank you. And do you have any social medias that people can follow? Because I just know social media is a big thing now.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on everything. I'm not on TikTok yet. I will be, but Everything else, yep, just look for me. Look for my name.
Perfect. I'll make sure that that's all tagged, linked, everything in the description for this podcast for people to easily access.
Thank you, Luke.
Um, of course. And Jen, I do want to say thank you for taking this time out of your very busy day. Thank you for also bearing with me through the technical issues we had at the beginning.
That's
Um,
nothing compared to other things that will happen, and you handled it like a pro. You didn't even sweat.
I appreciate that. Um, Jen, again, thank you so much. I know you're super busy, but we do sign off by saying bye to the people. So I just want to say bye and thank you.
Bye, people. Thanks to Luke's friends and listeners and viewers. I hope that we motivated you and inspired you to really think about what your heart's saying to you.
I think we have, and I think more importantly, you have. So thank you.
Mhm. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you for listening to the Helpful Huddle podcast. Remember to give us a like and a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter with the user handle at helpful_huddle and the YouTube channel at Helpful Huddle Podcast. You are also able to listen to us on both Spotify and Apple Podcast. The links are also found in the description below. Please reach out with your questions on topics that you would like to learn about in the future.